Hello, it's Collette from the Sacred Rose Temple, and I'm here to give you this week's energy forecast. Wow, well, I've been away for a few days attending my brother's wedding, and I'm back here now feeling lots of things stirring inside of me as we come into this Leo energy. We've got the Leo new moon and also entered into the birthday of Leo, and what that brings up for us in the collective is quite huge. So we know that Leo really is all about sovereignty, us being in our soul's kind of instinctual way of moving through the world, exhibiting radiance, having fires of courage, and being visible. And I think this is a big thing at the moment about visibility and what that actually means. And the Leo is like charismatic and outgoing and isn't shy and is ready to speak out what they feel, what they believe, like courageously and with a huge fire. And this has come up a lot for me actually over the last week since I last recorded the energy report about the expression of ourselves. And Leo is that expressive sign. And so I want to bring that question in first of all. Like, how do you express yourself? How do you go about being self expressive and really portraying who you are through many modalities as a woman, women that are listening to this? How do you portray yourself externally and then internally with the voice or with your work or your creativity? How is yourself expressed? And I had some interesting conversations and just some deep musings that's come up in my world recently with regards to being a woman and speaking out. And it's been a long time since women have been repressed, compressed. When we speak out, we hold an authentic, righteous, and strong will and voice. It's often condemned. We're seen as different, and it's usually kind of frowned upon or spoken about. And when men are this, it's less jerking, to be honest. But we've all had this subjected upon us that when somebody holds strong truth and power in words, we kind of like to juxtapose that and turn it into something negative. This leads me into what we're actually sat in today on the 22nd of July, and that's the Feast of Magdalene. And I have been a huge fan of Magdalene for many years, followed her in the Christian mystical tradition, and really she's been deeply embodied within me as a guide and an inspiration in my life, and a woman that I've been able to look up to and take the Gnostic story of and try to embody it within my own body, rather than just regurgitate gnostically and from other sources what she is. Try to use what she is as a living, breathing testimony of the empowered feminine, and a feminine that I feel holds this, what we're talking about, this Leo energy, this energy that is courageous and radiant and sovereign and speaks out. Being in the Magdalene energy, I've done a big post about this today, so I don't really want to repeat it, but it's about being an embodied service. It's about speaking out against structures. It's about seeing that the structures that we live in are corrupt. And this is just really vital at this time in humanity that we begin to see the corruptness of the structures we are in and we have relied on. This has been going on since the beginning of the time. The people have been fooled and they've believed XYZ about a certain system. But systems and structures usually keep people in square boxes. And as a self-confessed rebel and an anarchist, probably at some point in my life, I realized that I am very much like the Magdalene in ways of I don't cohere to set structures and I struggle within them, to be honest, because they often challenge my own opinions and ask me to conform or to smallen or to do things against my own free will. And so Magdalene was very much that. And, you'll see in my post today, I get a little bit tetchy about the fact that We often see people proclaiming the Magdalene and then living in within the institutions, the very institutions in which she called out and said, don't follow them. They're corrupt. Make your own way. Spread a new structure that is purely about love, being kind, leading, helping others, being in service. That was the message. It didn't say go to church on a Sunday. It didn't say do the structure that the men say. She didn't say that. She, along with the other prophets and particularly her beloved Yeshua, spoke about the structure being from the heart, spoke about the structure being from the beloved, from the creator. And if you can find that within yourself, you can operate from there. And that's been my muse and my guide for many, many years. And actually, after this week, I'm really feeling that strongly. I watch people systematically adhere to man-made structures and just like robotic, even if it's spiritual, robotic systems in which they conform to a set of words or a set of beliefs imposed upon them by someone else. Yet, very random or rarely, even randomly and rarely, has to really go within and say, what do you feel is right? What do you think your morning prayer should look like? What do you think this should feel like? Instead of just being in a club. It's basically that we like to be in a club because we're deeply tribal. But what happens if we go back to the two tribes? We're in our true tribes. We were all oracles, we were all voices, we were all bringing in from the creator what needed to advance or refine and make better our societies. I think that really is about what Magdalene did. She came out of the square box and she created a vision that came from her heart. It wasn't dictatorial. It didn't say do X, Y, and Z, but it guided people how to go into themselves to pull and extract the wisdom of the creator that live within our wombs and haras. So I want to really just honor her today. And I'll get quite emotional that she has been a muse and a guide for me, but I'm using a guide that's asked me to step into the living embodiment of her. And I plan to carry on and continue to do that. So, what I want to ask within this Leo energy and the energy in the collective that we're currently in this week is just notice the structures and squares that you are trying to fit in. I was really gobsmacked going back to England and just seeing like a collective mass hysteria of copying. It's like there's like it doesn't happen here as much in France, I would say, but just like one brand of shoes and everybody's wearing them. Like everybody's wearing the same kind of clothes, cut the same way. There's just this really crazy like mob mentality where people just follow what everybody else is doing. Like grey everywhere, like everybody's house is decorated grey. I've said this before, but I just find it crazy the indoctrination that the masses are kind of put into and follow, and it's symbolic for the deeper kind of brainwashing that goes on and beliefs and ideologies. And so as we move into this energy, the Leo really asks us to come out of the illusions that have been created by structures and by the field that is trying to contain us. And to become the lion means that we become deeply instinctual and we become deeply intuitive. The Leo, the lion, especially sits in the remit of really tuning into their own understanding and senses and feeling around them. That's how the lion survives, and not only survives, but becomes the king of the jungle. And that is because there's a reclamation of expressing themselves, being brave, and being in that intuitive and instinctual place. And that asks us to distract ourselves out of that main gist of life looks like ABC. You go to work 9 to 5, you take 4 holidays a week, and then you look forward to coming home and putting the TV on at night. For me, that's a very rigid box that has been a way of caging the lion and turning them into sheep. So that might provoke or trigger some people, but I'm talking about speaking out. I'm talking about saying things that you believe in, even if it triggers and provokes other people, because the trigger, the defensiveness, the feeling that you get from something you don't like to hear is the very place that you need to heal. It's the very place that you need to go to. And it's the very place that's calling you to say, why am I so provoked by that? Why am I so triggered? And it's not a bad thing. Magdalene was triggered heavily by the systems that she was in. She was triggered heavily by what was asked for her as a woman. And that was the revolution. That was what allowed to drop her into her instinct, into intuition, and to fiercely roar and say, this is not me. And the structures fall when we speak out. We mustn't forget that even when you're in such adversity, and I find myself often in groups where I am speaking something that is quite controversial or unknown to them or different to them, because my field of study has been psychospirituality and psychology and womb wisdom and the feminine mysteries, which is pretty much unknown in mainstream, that I often feel that although I feel the projection and the uncomfort, the uncomfort of the other, that when you say something, seeds are always sown. And we must remember that something triggering, something that doesn't want to be heard, can often lead to a deep change. So speak out. Remember to speak out. What we will find is that not just this week, as we go forward through to the end of the summer, that we're living in this kind of dualistic world. Well, we know that. But like you'll feel the dual of, if you're someone that is broken free from the narrative and the structures and you see the illusions around us in all manners, like it's not that you believe in one party and not the other, it's that you believe that both parties are corrupt because it's a circus trying to entertain us. It's not about being politically on one side or the other. It's about knowing that every single freaking structure we have right now needs to fall and be rebirthed. So if you're that person right now, then know that you're going to find that there is like two streams going on in our world. One where the illusion is still very thick in people's lives and they're still under the spell of the mass and the matrix, we might call it. And that there is people that are resolutely against the whole thing that we're in now and thinking, this isn't right. This isn't the way I want to live. And this is not the way I'm going to carry on. And I'm going to create my own destiny and my own life and allow that to look the way I want it to look without worrying what everybody else is thinking. And that takes bravery. That takes Leo lion energy to be brave and come out of the mundane. Life out of the mundane is possible. You have to be brave. You have to take risks. You also have to release the certain things that illusion has held you captive to. So I'm going to say it, like huge mortgages, paying off massive amounts of money on cars is going to imprison you as a person. That's what I've seen back in England. Free yourself, live more simply, buy an old car, but make the other things in your life more quality. Those material things have been impressed on us by the structure that wishes to imprison us. And I've known this for years and kind of said it subtly, but I'm kind of over that now. Like, I know that we're living in a disillusioned world. It couldn't be clearer. The world is going to tits. And the ones who know this and have known the structures and the dark ways in which you collect and sheep dip people is exactly what has been happening, what we see out there. So yeah, it's time for a really big, deep change. These two timelines at the moment are really going to, provoke deep feeling in us, and we must both on both sides go to the triggers and feel what that's still bringing up for us, feeling where we still silence ourselves, where we don't speak out, where we don't want to be seen as too much or different or whatever that is, and see if we can hold projections that people put upon us and still not let it uh negate our worth, but hold our worth and say, yeah. I think I made a declaration yesterday that said, like, yeah, I'm super different and I'm actually okay with that because I think society is pretty sick. So hold your sovereignty, move through it with a new knowledge and a new way, knowing that we can make a change because the old rhetoric is not working anymore. And that is also going to be in line with the Mercury retrogrades that we're currently going through. It's going to take us backwards. We're going to be asked to just maybe readdress some beliefs that we hold, maybe readdress some ways in which we've operated in the world, in relationships, in our work, and the way we live our lives. I think it's a huge week this week about being always, for me, comes down to being authentically and fundamentally you. But many people don't know what that is because they're shrouded in the illusions of the world. So if we can strip away from materialism, from mundane living, through numbing ourselves out through TV, alcohol, whatever we use to numb out, and drop into ourself, into our heart, into our soul, into our spirit, then we could see massive changes, not only in our personal selves, but in the world. And I plan to keep doing that. I've got much work to do on myself still. And I hold the container of trying to be like these people that are inspiring to me and continuing to live without an imposed structure or a world that's very numbed out from emotions, that's numbed out from feeling, that's numbed out from soul. I really stand for the opposite. And I know many of you that listen to my podcast also do that. So I just want to say, embrace the Leo energy, raw, be bold, instinctual, intuitive, but most of all, be yourself and learn to voice that in a world that desperately needs to hear what you've got to say. So take care, much love, and I'll speak to you all again next week. Bye for now.